All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Femi Longe, like you were told. And I want to share perspective on how we get Bitcoin to 8 billion people in the world. We hear a lot, we say a lot about Bitcoin adoption. But I don't think there's lots of clarity on what exactly it means to adopt Bitcoin. Does it mean everybody in the world actually has Bitcoin, buys Bitcoin? Or does it mean they use Bitcoin? To answer the question, I want to take us back to the very beginning. Well, the very beginning of Bitcoin, that is. You remember this? The Bitcoin white paper that started it all. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they were, decided they wanted to create technology that is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. 14 years ago, he shared this vision. Unfortunately, and I say it's unfortunate, 14 years on, in the culture we've built around Bitcoin, we've largely forgotten the core essence of Bitcoin and a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Why do I say that? When you think about cash or money, it typically has three properties, and you've heard about them talked about a lot in the last 2 days. Money can be a medium of exchange, a way to send value from one person in one part of the world to the other, a way to store value, or a unit of account, something you use in determining what exactly is value what when I give it from me to you. Unfortunately, in the last 14 years, as we've built an ecosystem, a community, a culture around Bitcoin, that community and culture has been influenced by thinking and paradigm from certain parts of the world. That's led to a sort of identity crisis in Bitcoin. And I call it the crisis between, is Bitcoin a store of value or is Bitcoin a medium of exchange? In the Bitcoin we have today, the store of value argument is winning, unfortunately. And I repeat the word unfortunately, because the thinking of the creator of Bitcoin, if you read the white paper, wasn't supposed to be for a technology that skews towards a way for people to store the value of their fiat. It was actually supposed to be a way for people to be able to transfer value from one part of the world to the next part of the world without relying on intermediaries. Within Bitcoin, right now, when you think about conversations in Bitcoin, on Bitcoin Twitter, when you think about the innovation that we're creating in Bitcoin, we have this kind of lopsided perspective. There's so much more conversation around price of Bitcoin, price goes up, stack sats and hodl, all about keeping your fiat value in Bitcoin, and very, very little conversations about how do people actually leverage the power of this tool as a way to send value from one part of the world to the other, or a way to use this as a means for people to actually trade without having fiat in the picture. And I think until we realize the damage that this lopsided perspective is having on Bitcoin as technology and Bitcoin as an ecosystem, we will never be able to get to global adoption. For my perspective, and I've only been in Bitcoin barely 3 years, but I've been involved in building startups and startup ecosystems in Africa, in the rest of the world. And I realize the damaging impact of this lopsided perspective. And I think if we really, really want to scale Bitcoin to the global majority, to the people on the far reaches of the earth, whose voices we rarely hear in Bitcoin, we need to be looking at how do we balance the conversation. How do we make Bitcoin as much focused on its properties as a store of value as well as its properties as a medium of exchange, as well as its properties as a unit of account. I hear people say, oh, Bitcoin is not good money and probably won't be for decades in the future. There are people in the world today who do not have decades in the future to wait for Bitcoin to fulfill its role as good digital money, peer-to-peer electronic cash that doesn't need intermediaries. And I don't think what we need to do to scale Bitcoin, yes, there's technology sides to it, but I think it's more a human challenge. And it's more a challenge in the mind and in the paradigm that those of us who are involved in this technology and in building it and in scaling it have to address. Otherwise, this technology will not go where it needs to get to. And so what I suggest we need in Bitcoin is a fundamental paradigm shift. A very fundamental paradigm shift. This is the current paradigm when people think about transactions and Bitcoin in the world. So the vast majority of people on this planet earn their living in a fiat job. And in our paradigm, we assume that that is the natural way things are. You have your day job, they pay you in fiat. Then we expect you, if you become a Bitcoiner, for you to convert your Bitcoin into, your fiat into Bitcoin. But then as a human being in living in this world, you have tons of things you need to do to enjoy a good quality life. You want to come to Sao Paulo for SatsConf, you need to take a plane. You need to pay, most likely in fiat. You want to eat, you want food, sustain yourself, you're most likely going to pay in fiat. You want to go out at night to the club, hang out with your boys, you need to pay in fiat. So we assume you earn fiat, convert your fiat to Bitcoin, and then when you need to spend for your quality of life, convert it back to fiat to spend. A part of the flaw in our paradigm is we assume that in this picture, that Bitcoin is at the center. In truth, for the majority of people on this planet, what's more important to them is how do I earn and how do I have a good quality of life? And if they can only primarily do that in fiat right now, then Bitcoin is not at the center, fiat is at the center. And the problem with this paradigm is that majority of the challenges that we're trying to fix in Bitcoin are because of this fundamental paradigm of how we believe human beings should interact with the technology and the currency. So when you think about it, earn fiat, save it in Bitcoin. You hear people say Bitcoin is great savings tech. Satoshi didn't create great savings tech. Satoshi wanted to create great spending tech. So you earn fiat, you save in Bitcoin. And when you think about majority of the innovation, majority of 90% of the tools that people are building in Bitcoin are tools to help you either change your fiat into Bitcoin or keep your Bitcoin wallet or change your fiat back into Bitcoin when you need to spend it. So people are building wallets and exchange. Heaven knows how many self-custodial, non-custodial wallets we need to have. The problem with this is that the majority of the points of failure in Bitcoin as we have it right now come at that point of interaction from converting your Bitcoin to fiat or converting your fiat back to Bitcoin. So volatility risk. You're only concerned about, when people say Bitcoin is volatile, Bitcoin is volatile when you compare it to fiat. And that's largely because the primary way majority of people on this planet are getting their Bitcoin is converting fiat into it. Because when you have to convert fiat into Bitcoin, then you're conscious about the price of Bitcoin to fiat at the point where you bought it, and the price at the point where you need to convert it back into fiat when you need to spend it. My argument, Bitcoin you earn. When you earn Bitcoin, you're less concerned about the volatility of the price of Bitcoin. When you earn Bitcoin directly, Privacy risks. At the point of converting your Bitcoin to fiat is the biggest areas where you have the risk of being doxxed as far as who you are in terms of your Bitcoin. So why we have peer-to-peer non-KYC exchanges, because once you have to interact with the fiat system, then you're risking the possibility that you'll be revealed. Security risks. UX friction. The user experience in Bitcoin is fundamentally flawed. Bitcoin addresses are extremely bad UX. Lightning addresses are extremely bad UX. But we feel it shouldn't matter for people because, yeah, you're just putting your Bitcoin in this, your fiat in this once, and it's there for a long time, so you should be able to live with the bad UX. But if you were my old mom in Nigeria, and I want her to become a Bitcoiner, she can't deal with Bitcoin addresses that are as long as they are right now. But also, at the point of the conversion in between is where people are also vulnerable to bad actors, scammers, the likes. If we really want Bitcoin to scale, if we really want Bitcoin adoption to scale as technology, we need a paradigm that completely eliminates fiat from the picture. We need to act right now as if we are in that future. We need a paradigm where human beings have an infinite number of ways that they can earn Bitcoin. We need a paradigm where the primary way people get Bitcoin right now is to earn it. And simultaneously, as you're creating that, you're also creating an infinite number of places that people can spend Bitcoin in. So when you think about the average human being on this planet, and I know a lot of the thinking in Bitcoin has been shaped by Western thinkers, Western leaders, Western philosophers. But the truth is, for the vast majority of this planet, the primary thing on their mind is how do I earn my daily bread? Yes, you want to store it, but you have to have extra to store. If you're in Nigeria, living below minimum wage, you don't even have enough, talk less of having funds to keep in Bitcoin for forever. And every time we discourage people from spending this technology and making them feel like idiots and fools when they spend it, we further re-entrench this perspective that really the only thing you really should spend is fiat. And as Jeff Booth, my favorite philosopher in the Bitcoin world, says, if we want to get to a Bitcoin world, we have to remove oxygen. We can't keep reinforcing the fiat world by keeping fiat at the center of the system and expecting that we'll move to a Bitcoin-dominated world. So what does it mean for us to be in this system today, thinking today, acting today, as if fiat wasn't a part of the picture? And how do we get to that world? How do we as a community move to that world? How do we get to that state that I call infinity, where people have an infinite number of ways in which they can earn Bitcoin and an infinite number of places that they can spend Bitcoin? I have a few suggestions. The first one for me, which is extremely key, is that utility is the clearest path to adoption, global adoption of Bitcoin. And what do I mean by utility? Money, cash, is one tool that man have made that every human being interacts with at every point in a day. How do we create a situation where at every point in a human being's day where they have to interact with money, that Bitcoin is a viable option? You wake up in the morning, you want to take Uber to work. You have an option to pay with your Bitcoin. You want to stop for a coffee at Starbucks or wherever you stop for your coffee. You have the option to pay in Bitcoin. You have a contract at work. You have the option to denominate the contract in Bitcoin. How do we get there? create utility solutions. In the early 2010s, just at the dawn of the mobile apps era, I happened to be one of those who created the startup ecosystem in Nigeria. And I find parallels, lots of parallels in how mobile apps have become something that is so ubiquitous and how we can scale Bitcoin. If you ask my old mom in Nigeria today, if she has a mobile app, she most likely will tell you no. If you ask my mom if she has a mobile app, she most likely will tell you no. But if you ask her if she has WhatsApp, of course. She uses it to communicate with her grandchildren when she needs to speak to them, or to send me all kinds of spams every day. She doesn't know mobile app, but she knows WhatsApp. Why? Because she has a problem to solve, and she can use technology that helps her solve that problem. Now imagine if somebody went to my mom to get her to use mobile apps and had to educate her and explain to her the difference between the iOS ecosystem and Android and what makes iOS good and what makes Android. She's not listening. It's the same thing we do in Bitcoin. We assume people have to know all these concepts to be able to use the technology, when all human beings are looking for is solutions to real problems they have in the simplest way possible. And so if we want Bitcoin to be something that human beings adopt on this planet, yes, censorship resistance, freedom, decentralization, all those buzzwords that we love to say are good. But the vast majority of people on this planet do not want a lecture to use a tool. They have a problem. We create a solution powered by the technology we have access to solve their problem. I need to pay for school fees for my cousin in Nigeria. Build me a tool that enables me to make that payment for where I am in the world. It solves the problem I have. I don't need to know if Bitcoin is in the back end. Every time we boil adoption down to education and ignore the place of creating utility solutions that solve people's problems, we delay adoption of the technology that we have access to. And the easiest way to do this is to find a niche that you have. Find a problem you have. And I'm saying this specifically to the Brazilians in the room, because I see that the majority of the currency moving challenges that Bitcoin helps us address is faced more by those of us in the global majority countries, the rest of the world. If I wanted to send money, if an American wants to send money to somebody in Australia, it's pretty easy on the existing rails. Not a problem. You whip out your card, MasterCard or Visa, the person in Australia gets the funds. If a Brazilian wants to send Brazilian reals to somebody in Australia, you probably have to convert first from reals to US dollars, then send it, and then get it converted to Australian dollars. That's too many steps and too much complication. And so those that will have the intimate knowledge of the problems with moving money that Bitcoin can help us address, that can build those tools, are those of us who live, who breathe the problems of moving money in the rest of the world. And we need to start thinking about that as our perspective when we think about this technology. I'm tired of people in the global majority countries trying to build another wallet and exchange. That's not what the world is looking for. The people in your countries have real problems that you can help them create solutions for, leveraging the power that's in the Bitcoin technology. But it won't happen if we're waiting for designers and developers in Silicon Valley to build those solutions, because they don't understand our reality. How else do we achieve global adoption? I believe if we want Bitcoin to be a tool that is used by everybody in the world, we need to find the existing applications that everybody in the world is already using to solve their problems. And we need to get them to integrate Bitcoin into the experience for their users. Practical example of this that I'd love to see. How many people here know Udemy? Anyone here have a course on Udemy? Now imagine the possibility to actually buy courses on Udemy in Bitcoin. Or be paid for the courses that you have listed on Udemy in Bitcoin. Udemy already reaches tens of millions of users. Why would Udemy integrate Bitcoin in? Because Udemy creators in the global majority countries, one of the biggest pain points they have right now is how do they actually get their pay earnings on the platform? Because most likely they're going through the fiat rails, with all kinds of intermediaries in the middle that's collecting cuts of it. We could decide we want to build Bitcoin alternatives, but if there are solutions in the world that's solving people's problems, that's creating opportunities for people to earn and to spend, it will actually take us less energy to actually engage them, to actually get them to integrate Bitcoin in their solutions. And maybe Udemy is too big. But for every Udemy, for every Uber, for every, you name it, application that's out there that we use, there's usually a challenger application that's trying to be number one. That we can actually get to integrate Bitcoin as their competitive advantage. That gives them an edge over number one, the incumbent in the market. If we did this, you get a platform that has 10 million users already to integrate Bitcoin. Suddenly, there's possibility for 10 million new people to get access to start using Bitcoin as currency. Now, I know I said education or educating everybody is not necessarily the path to skill. But maybe that's not true. I think the education we need, rather than generic education for the consumers, the people on the streets, we need to actually look at targeted education to key drivers of skill. Who's in Silicon Valley, orange peeling the founders and the CEOs of big tech companies to integrate Bitcoin in their products? Who is working with any of the big accelerators in the world to get the founders that are in their books to integrate Bitcoin on their products? Who is engaging policymakers that can make the policies that makes it extremely hard for us to use Bitcoin as currency and gets them to actually put in place favorable legislation that preserves that currency power of Bitcoin? That, for me, is a higher use of the dollars and the time and the energy that we spend in education in this space. Let's educate the people that can help us bring in 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, 1 billion people on Bitcoin as soon as tomorrow. We need more stories. We need more stories of how people are actually using Bitcoin as money. I work at the Human Rights Foundation. And the Human Rights Foundation has done a lot in the Bitcoin space in helping particularly people from the West understand the currency challenges that human rights activists and people who live in repressive environments face when it comes to moving money. We have a financial freedom program that's dedicated to doing the work of helping the activists use Bitcoin as freedom technology and educating Bitcoin people to actually understand that the realities from the West is not the realities for everyone else. But we're just one. We need more people in this space showing and telling the stories of how people, how real communities, how real human beings in different parts of the world are using the powers of Bitcoin as a way to trade and to send value, as a way to solve and improve their quality of life. So that message rings first within our community, but then we also use that as food and insights when we start innovating around the technology that we work with. And again, to the Brazilians in the room and to anyone from the global majority countries in the room, we need to bring more of our own perspective into Bitcoin. We cannot keep reinforcing narratives of Bitcoin that may not match our own lived realities in our countries. And no one is going to tell our stories for us if we do not do the work to tell the stories for ourselves. At the African Bitcoin Conference this year, we're launching something special that I'm hoping we're going to see more of in the rest of the Bitcoin world. It's a first ever Bitcoin UX bootcamp. We're bringing 10 UX researchers from across Africa. They're coming to the conference to learn about Bitcoin and the user experience of Bitcoin. But then during the conference, they're actually going to be conducting active user research on a few key Bitcoin products. The results of that research will be presented as reports for the builders of those products. But they will also be put open source. So anyone else that's building a similar product can actually go in there and understand what do real users want in products. Bitcoiners need to stop building products for just Bitcoiners. We need to start building products for the average human being on the street. And that will only happen if we're actually going out to listen to them, to hear them, to ask questions from them, and to share that knowledge within our community. And we need to do more of it. We need to do more of it, particularly those of us from the rest of the world who need that critical value or the critical essence of Bitcoin as a tool for transferring value. At the Bitcoin Development Fund at Human Rights Foundation, we exist to help make Bitcoin work as technology, but make sure it can get into the hands of human rights activists and people living under authoritarian governments in the world. And everything I've said here today is critical for us, and is critical in what we would like to see in types of projects we would like to support. We'd like to support projects that help the average human being find a way to earn and spend Bitcoin. We like to support projects that help people interact with Bitcoin in their own native language. Because not everybody in the world speaks English. We'd like to support projects that help Bitcoin become a real tool that people who don't understand all our Bitcoin language and jargon can use as a tool to improve their quality of life. And we're looking for people to apply to get supported. So if you click that, if you scan that QR code or take a picture of it, you get to our Bitcoin Development Fund page and learn more about the fund and the kind of things we want to support. Bitcoin, the essence of Bitcoin is that it can be used as a tool to improve the lives of human beings on this planet. And that only comes when people have an infinite number of ways that they can earn Bitcoin, have earning Bitcoin as the primary way to get Bitcoin, remove fiat from the picture completely, move to what we call hyper-Bitcoinization, but really where Bitcoin is a viable currency, not just a way to store your fiat value. And that's the world that I wake up every day and hope that we can work to achieve. And I hope you join me on the journey. I firmly believe that the rest of the world, with human beings, in places like Brazil, places like Kenya, places like South America, Southeast Asia, the United States, is where Bitcoin scales. As tools, as technology, as money that people can use to transact value. But we have to change our mindset and paradigm if we're going to make this happen. Thank you very much.